same oath is given in court when a witness testifies. And those depositions involve a witness that goes to the office of one of the attorneys. A court reporter like Ms. Poole is present. The attorneys are present. And the witnesses can be expert witnesses, parties, recipient witnesses. And the attorneys ask the witness questions. The questions are answered by the deponent under penalty of perjury, and the court reporter transcribes the questions and answers verbatim, as the court reporter is doing now. And sometimes there's a video so that there's a real-time viewing of the deposition in addition to the transcript, and that deposition is used at trial. If a witness is unavailable at trial, the deposition is read to the jury as if the witness were testifying, and the jury is instructed that they are to consider the deposition testimony just as if the witness were testifying. And when the witness does testify at trial, the deposition is oftentimes used to impeach the testimony, to try to establish that when the deposition was taken, the witness answered the question that's being asked at trial differently at the deposition. Does somebody have a copy of a deposition transcript handy that
sure.
You can just show the jury? Yeah, thank you. And that's a deposition transcript, and I have little doubt that as the trial proceeds, during examination of witnesses, one of the attorneys will say, Judge, I'd like to read from the deposition of the witness, page 25, lines 1 through 7, and then they will get a transcript and read it. And that is to be considered just as if the witness were testifying from the stand. That deposition or that discovery process takes about a year, more or less, and if the parties are unable to resolve their dispute by then here we are. We impanel a jury of fair-minded fellow citizens to do their duty, to be fair and just, and the evidence proceeds. And it's not as dramatic as you see on TV, because the parties and the attorneys have a pretty good idea of the witnesses that are going to testify, what the witnesses are going to say, because they've had their depositions taken. The documents have been exchanged, so they know pretty much what's coming. It's not as dramatic as you might see on TV, but it is obviously no less important. This is a significant case, and the attorneys know pretty much about the case. They know everything about the case, but obviously what they don't know is how you folks are going to view things. Once you come in with your verdict, then that'll be the final piece of the puzzle. Then the posturing stops, and that's, as they say, the moment of truth. And once that happens, then the parties can go about other things and put this behind it. But your job, obviously, is significant, and to the parties, it's real significant. That is how we got here today, and that's what you can expect in the next couple of weeks. It's an important, difficult job, and as I say, if there's anything we can do to make things more comfortable for you, we will absolutely do it. Anything I neglected to tell the jury, I should tell them? Or?
Not that I'm aware of, Your Honor.
We're fine, Your Honor.
Anybody have a question? And that reminds me, let me just say something. Once in a while, jurors say, gee, can I ask a question? I don't do that, not because I don't want the jury to be fully informed, but I've kind of given you a promise as to when this would end, and if I said jurors could raise their hand and ask witnesses questions, my guess is that there might be a juror that might feel pretty important by participating, and I'm not sure the questions will be particularly astute, and instead of the 23rd of September as the absolute time to be finished, I think we'd be lucky to finish by the 23rd of October. So I don't, and I'm not alone, allow jurors to ask questions, because the attorneys know what, they know their case and they know what the juror is going to want to hear. And so, but saying that, if there's something that somebody really wants to know, if just something is just something very important that you think should be covered, or you want to know, just write the question down on your pad and give it to Ms. Lopez or Deputy Pedroza, and he or she will give it to me, and I'll share it with the attorneys, and just say one of the jurors wants to know this. So if you have a question, feel free to do that. Anybody have a question now before we hear from Mr. Chapin and the plaintiff's opening statement? Okay. Are you ready to go, Mr.
I am ready to go, Your Honor.
Okay.
One request, if I can get the podium, may I
Sure,
go there?
absolutely. You can set up, and as I say, I want to give the reporter and the jury a little break about 10:30, so around that time, if you're not finished, just let us know when would be a good time to interrupt your opening statement.
Fine, Your Honor. I do a little maintenance here. Good morning. At the outset, I want to promise you two things as we go through this case. One is, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to try to move it. And secondly, I'm going to be spot on honest with you, because at the end of this trial, when you look back, you read your notes of what I've said, and you read your notes of what the evidence has shown, it is my goal that you will see that I've told you the truth as I present my opening statement to you. The plaintiff in this case is Coach Beth Burns. Coach Burns has a storied career as an athlete. She grew up on the East Coast, New Jersey to be exact, where she, through grade school and high school, was an athlete. She went to Ohio Wesleyan College, where she started in basketball at the end of her career, and as soon as she was eligible, she was inducted into the Ohio Wesleyan Athletic Hall of Fame. She's had a Hall of Fame career. She became a very prestigious women's college basketball coach over 20 years. Coach Steve Fisher, the very successful and popular coach at San Diego State, said that she was highly regarded in women's basketball circles across the country. To this day, San Diego State's website publishes a biography, a very laudatory biography of Coach Burns. And we can have slide 77. The first page of it describes her as exhibiting leadership, charisma, passion, energy, and expertise. It describes Coach Burns, who's dedicated herself as a collegiate head coach. She's the winningest coach in the San Diego State women's basketball history. She has been at San Diego State for 2 sessions, 16 years total, and her accomplishments during her second stint there are almost legendary. She took the program to new heights, going to the NCAA Sweet 16 in postseason play, the first team at San Diego State to do that. She won conference championships, she won the conference tournament, and she was named Mountain West Conference Coach of the Year on multiple occasions. San Diego State has a Division I program. Division I in college athletics means that it's at the highest level. So they compete with the big schools, USC, UCLA, Southern California. Cal and Northern California, Stanford, Arizona, all the Pac-12 schools, and the schools across the country. That's the competition that they play. Coach Burns has been widely known as a talented coach. Now, I said she'd been at San Diego State 2 times. The first time she went there was in the 80s. And at that point in time, the program was kind of in the basement, so to speak. It had not been performing well. In 8 years, she took it to a championship level. She left for a few years, went to other employment, and she came back to San Diego State in 2005, remained until 2013, and it's that stint, that 8-year stint, that we're going to be talking about in this case, 2005 to 2013. One of Coach Burns' hallmarks was her commitment to her players, to her team. Now, there is no question, and we don't dispute this, and we acknowledge it right up front, and that is she was a tough coach. She had high standards. She set high standards for herself. She set high standards for her players, and she set high standards and high expectations for the people who were supposed to support the San Diego State women's basketball program. An example of her commitment to her players is that academics was very important to her. And that commitment is evidenced by the fact that most of her players, 96.4% of her players, who played for her for 4 years, exhausted eligibility, they graduated with a degree. She wouldn't let them take easy courses. Like, she didn't buy into the dumb jock mentality. She didn't want the players to take the easy way out. And so she would encourage them and drive them, both academically and in their personal life and on the floor, to heights that they probably hadn't thought of before they came under her tutelage. Being a coach in a Division I program has a lot of challenges. You're working with 18 to 20-year-old, in this case, women. And you recruit, you go out, you strive to bring in the best that you can get, and you pick your recruits. And these kids come from all kinds of backgrounds. Some of them come from stable backgrounds. Some of them come from backgrounds that aren't so stable. Coach Burns took care to deal with these players as an individual. Some of the kids, quite frankly, have been abused, and they needed therapy. They needed counseling. Coach Burns oversaw that. She encouraged it, and she promoted the players doing that. Coach Burns worked at San Diego State under a contract. She signed a contract in 2005. It was renewed in 2007 and extended in 2010 and 2012. So she had basically 4 contracts that she worked under while she was at San Diego State. And we'll be dealing with the 2012 contract primarily. In 2012, her contract was renewed for 5 years, extended to 2017. Armed with that new contract in 2012 for the 2012-13 season, she goes out, she wins the Mountain West Conference. She was named Coach of the Year of the Mountain West Conference and had 2 players on her team who were named to the Women's All-American team. But 1 month within the end of that season, it all came crashing down. She was fired. Here's the story. of what happened to Coach Burns, what San Diego State did to cause her harm. In April of 2013, on a Friday, Coach Burns received an email. Her boss was a gentleman named Jim Sturk. Let me explain to you a little bit about the hierarchy here at this point in time. Mr. Sturk was the director of athletics, the athletic director at San Diego State. He was over all of the coaches, over all of the athletic programs. He had a lieutenant, an associate athletic director named John David Wicker. So Mr. Wicker reported to Mr. Sturk. Mr. Sturk in turn reported to a woman named Sally Rouse, who was the vice president of business and finance at San Diego State, and she in turn reported to the president. So we've got the president, Ms. Rouse, Mr. Sturk, Mr. Wicker, and then Coach Burns reported to Mr. Wicker. For administrative things, Mr. Sturk was her boss and who did her ratings. So that's the hierarchy that we'll be dealing with here. Now, in the past, Coach Burns had gone to a year-end meeting where they reviewed the season, talked about the accomplishments, talked about the problems. This is what she was expecting when she got this email on Friday afternoon. It told her to report to Mr. Sturk's office on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. That was April the 16th, the day she'll never forget. So at 7:50 in the morning, being punctual as she is, she reports to Mr. Wicker's office, talked to his assistant for a few minutes, and finally was ushered into his office. She walks into the office, and there was Mr. Sturk and Mr. Wicker. And there was a third person, a woman that she had no earthly idea who she was. This woman was introduced to her as Michelle Thaler. So this meeting unfolds. Mr. Sturk starts talking to her. Coach Burns described him as kind of hanging his head and reading from a piece of paper. And he essentially said, you know, a few weeks ago I couldn't imagine us having this conversation. But I'm here to tell you that you have struck a subordinate, and that is an act of workplace violence, and you're going to be terminated with cause immediately. You no longer work here. Now, Coach Burns was shocked. She was stunned, thinking she was going to have a year-end review, and very quickly into the meeting, she's told she's out of here. So she inquired, and I will tell you, Coach Burns is a fighter. And even though she was shocked and stunned, she started asking questions. And she said, I hit someone, I struck a subordinate. I haven't struck a subordinate. I can't imagine where this is coming from. Sturk said, well, we have video surveillance. She said, surveillance? Why am I being surveilled? And he backed off and he said, well, I don't mean surveillance, we have a video. We have a video of you striking a subordinate. Did they show it to her at that time? No. They did tell her who she allegedly struck? No. So at that point in time, Ms. Thaler jumps in to the conversation. And she later learned Ms. Thaler was there from administration and an HR capacity. So Ms. Thaler jumps in and starts saying, you struck a subordinate. That's a fireable offense. And you no longer work here. And Coach Burns said, well, is this irreparable? You know, can I do something about it? No. You can't. There's no going back. We only go forward. This has been reviewed at the highest level by the president. slide 68, exhibit 77, will show the introduction here. Over here in the left margin, where you see it highlighted there, it says reviewed at the highest level, e.g. president. These are Mr. Sturt's talk draft notes. Now, these notes go into more detail than what they talked about at this meeting. They never talked about pushing, pulling, and shoving, and so forth and so on. All they talked about to her was she had hit a subordinate, and that's all she knew, that it had gone to the president and that they could not do anything about it. Can you all see that okay? Okay. So, that is, and Mr. Sturt has testified that he had taken this to the president of the university. Okay. So, sitting there in this meeting, learning for the first time that her career that she had worked so hard to build was coming apart and coming down. Coach Burns continued to try to see if it could be reviewed. She was told it couldn't be. They were moving forward, and so she was handed a press release that San Diego State wanted to release. And they did talk to her about, and they worked out what she was going to say, what was going to be said about her termination. But they were going to announce it on that day. She no longer worked there. She worked with them. They got the press release put together. And she was given three options. She was given the option of retiring, of resigning, or being fired. And she was told that if she retired, she would get her benefits. She was told by the people, and she had no idea about this stuff, that if she fired or resigned, she wouldn't get it. Now, we later learned that that's not accurate. That she could have been fired and get her benefits. She could have resigned and got her benefits. But she chose, under duress, as she was sitting there, to retire. So, she leaves the campus, talks briefly with a couple of her subordinates, one in person, one on the phone, goes home, still stunned. She calls her sister on the East Coast. And for the rest of the day, she was at home and she received telephone calls. This news spread like wildfire across the country. She received texts, emails, phone calls from over 100 people across the country. So, San Diego State issued the press release. Coach Burns' career ended abruptly. She still didn't know what she had done or who she had done it to. And I'm going to show you what we learned several days later when we were able to finally get the video. It's Exhibit 40, Slide 8, 82 and 83. Now, let me just, as we introduce this is in two segments. And I'm going to just kind of share with you what is shown. The first segment is...
Mr. King, do you want the light stand?
Yes, if we could, Your Honor. Would that be appropriate?
It's up to you.
I would love it.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Now, to set the stage here for you, the bench, as it's called in basketball, is a series of chairs on the sideline, and they are very close together. The coaches sit there, the players sit there, and seated next to Coach Burns was an assistant coach named Adam Barrett. And Mr. Barrett had a clipboard that was on his left thigh. So Coach Burns normally stood or crouched on the sideline, didn't even sit in the chairs. But that day she had 102-degree fever. She was very ill. And so she was sitting. Now, as I told you, she is an intense coach. She's a fiery coach. And she wants to win, and her teams generally do. So she's very involved in the game. So in the first clip, and you got to watch it closely because it moves fast. In the first clip, she is seen taking her, looks like her fist, and bringing it down on the clipboard of the left thigh of the guy seated next to her. And she then says something down the bench, and that's it. And this was in response to a play that went awry. The second clip that you will see is another play that goes awry, and she, in response to it, moves her arm out and does what I think that in the vernacular of athletics is called an arm bar, and hits the left bicep of the assistant coach, Adam Barrett. Now that's what I'm going to describe what you're going to see. So, if you'll play it, please. All right. You want to see it one more time? See it okay? Can we play it one more time so it's so fast? Okay. What's happened there is if you see her doing her hand like this, her players are not getting back down the court like she wants them to, and she's trying to get them and inspire them to go down the court. Okay, let's go to the next one. I'm going to step over here so you folks can see better. Let's get out of your way. So what had happened there was a player for the opposite team had sunk a Hail Mary three-point shot. Yonder we can turn the lights back. Sure, but that's okay. And that's what she was reacting to. That's what she did. That is what she was told constitutes workplace violence. I got her fired. So, ladies and gentlemen, who we're suing and why are we suing? San Diego State is the California State University system, which San Diego State's a part, is a defendant in this case. And we're suing them for two things. One is breach of contract, and the other one is whistleblower retaliation. So let me go into the breach of contract and retaliation with you. We'll go to slide 841. Slide 84. First reason, San Diego fired Coach Burns without cause and did not pay her what she was entitled to under the contract. Secondly is, they fired her in retaliation because she sought equal opportunities for the women's basketball program at San Diego State University. So those are the claims that we have in this case. I'm going to discuss them with you. Central to this issue is the extension of a contract occurred in July 2012. The contract states that she serves at the pleasure of the president, which means that she can be terminated for any legal reason. any legal reason. But if she's terminated for a legal reason, they have to pay her the money that is owed to her under the contract. For example, she has 4 years left on the contract. The contract called for $220,000 a year. She's fired for a legal reason. They owe her $880,000. The only situation in which they don't have to pay her is if she's terminated for cause. For cause. Now, cause is defined in her contract, and I'm going to show that to you now. Slide 5. This will be Exhibit 56.6. We've highlighted it here, these phrases from the contract. And it says at the top of paragraph 2, cause shall include any of the following. And it goes down there to F, the highlighted part, that says conduct of coach which is seriously prejudicial to the interests of the university or its athletic program, or which is a material violation of the university's policy. So they said to her, in essence, that striking that assistant coach, as you did on the bench in that game, is seriously prejudicial to the best interests of the university or its athletic program, or not the best interests. So that's what they said, and that's what they terminated her for. Now, leading up to this firing in April of 2013 was a series of events. When Coach Burns took over the program in 2005, it was, as her term is, like a startup business. The program had been languishing. And so she had to get it going. The first season there, they didn't win many games. It was kind of embarrassing to her. But slowly she started building. And to do that, she had to get things for the program. She had to challenge people to support the program. She had to have people who weren't accustomed to providing support to the women's program do things. Now, one of the claims that we're going to hear is that she is a very intense, persistent, and can be gruff appearing sometimes until people get to know her. And admittedly, in her efforts to get her program going, she may have rubbed some people the wrong way. She may have done that. So what were some of the things that Coach Burns was striving to achieve for the program, where she was in there intensely fighting for? Let me give you some examples here. In the area of publicity, publicity is a big thing in a program in a couple of respects. One, it helps you draw people into the games, and two, it's a great recruiting tool. One of the things that is important in the recruitment is what's called a media guide. A media guide, M-E-D-I-A guide. That guide showcases the team for the previous season, their highlights, the players, their record, and the things that they've done. They use that media guide when they go out recruiting. I mean, her assistant coaches, she and her assistant coaches went throughout the country to find people, to try to bring them into San Diego State. They had to sell the program. They need something to present to them, something tangible they could see, so that they could present it to them. And she was a dedicated and loyal person at Montezuma Mesa. She loved it. But she couldn't get media guides. Or she got it. it was far inferior to the men's guide. The men got glossy, colored guides. If she got a guide, it was frequently in black and white, and it didn't measure up to the competition that she was facing as she went around the country trying to bring in student athletes to build the program. Publicity. That's an example of something she had to fight for there. Equipment is another area. In the area of equipment, one of the things that they had was travel sweats. They would provide the team with travel sweats. These kids traveled by airplane to several locations, some warm, some cold. They would normally wear travel sweats with the team logo on it to show San Diego State. So going into the 2012-2013 season, the women's team did not have practice gear or travel gear. The men's team did. As December of 2012, they would begin to travel into cold climes. And the practice gear had not arrived, the sweats had not arrived. And some of the women were from poor backgrounds. They didn't have the money to go out and buy it. The school hadn't provided it as they were supposed to and normally did, as they did to the men's team. So they didn't have the things that they needed. And things kind of started coming to a head in December of 2013. And that's when the equipment room at San Diego State, let me explain that to you. The equipment is controlled out of a central room called the equipment room. That's where the ordering is done, that's where they store it and so forth when they get it. So the equipment room used their Twitter account to send out a tweet. Exhibit 492 explains that the pewter gray uni Aztec men's basketball is wearing tonight is their 5th different uniform of the season. Coach Burns gets that. She sees it and she thinks, my goodness, they've got 5 uniforms. We don't have travel sweats. We don't have practice gear for our team. So she, in turn, sends that to the administration, asking them to provide the sweats. She didn't get it. She didn't get it. She told them the weather was cold. People are getting sick. Exhibit 489. It's evidence of what she told them. Beth Burns to John David Wicker. Remember, he's the person below Mr. Sturck. Mr. Sturck's lieutenant. And it says, FYI, we still have no sweats. Half of my staff, self-included, and at last count 5 athletes, have the flu. It was 0 in Colorado. I knew I needed your help. Her plea for sweats went unheeded. As a matter of fact, Mr. Wicker just stopped trying to fix the problem, and his ultimate response to Coach Burns, or actually to Tammy Stevens, her operations director, was this: you should just shut up and deal with it. That's what he said. Another problem was season tickets. she got Exhibit 494.2. She got an email from a fan who had had problems with the ticket office trying to get tickets for the women's game and getting a seating space. And quite frankly, you know, you could fire Kent to the AS Arena for women's games most of the times, and you wouldn't get anybody because they didn't have a lot of attendance at their games. And everything they could do, Coach Burns wanted to do everything she could do to get the fans there. And basically, this fan writes an email reporting that the women's program didn't get the treatment that he felt they should. And she passed this on to the administration. So she was pushing for media guys. She was pushing for equipment, basic equipment for the team. She was trying to get folks into the games, and ticket people were not responding. She asked for more shoes for her players, higher wages for coaches, and more, because there was a disparity in the pay between the coaches in the men's program and the coaches in the women's program. And the list goes on and on. Now, why is this important, and how does this tie into anything in this case? And remember, at the outset, as I told you about Title IX. Title IX has a lot of components to it. And we're not claiming that San Diego State was not complying with Title IX in a number of areas, but we are contending that they did not comply with a part of Title IX that deals with how you treat student athletes. Coach Burns wasn't wanting more for the women at all. She wasn't wanting to take away from Coach Fisher because she really respected him and enjoyed working alongside him in a parallel program. She just wanted to get equal opportunity for the women of the women's basketball program at San Diego State. So, slide 76 is what we will refer to here as the part of Title IX that's an issue. This exhibit, this slide, contains a list of factors that are to be considered in whether a program is providing equal opportunity to its male and female students, and in this case, athletes. And the ones that are issued here are the provision of equipment and supplies, scheduling of games and practice times, travel and per diem allowance, opportunity to receive tutoring or coaching, academic tutoring, compensation of coaches and tutors, locker rooms, housing, and dining facilities. All right. Now, I've talked to you about already items on this laundry list: equipment and supplies, coaching and academic tutoring, salaries. And let me talk a little bit about housing. Now, when she came, they had not had summer school for students, for women's athletics, women's basketball players. So there's a problem. And that problem was students would come in before school started, but they didn't get their scholarship money until the day of, when classes started, after classes started. So here you have kids coming in, and one poignant story is that one of the students she recruited who came in early, she didn't have a suitcase. She just had a few things in the back. So she didn't have any money. She didn't have any money to buy food, and there was even an issue with her having a place to stay. So Coach Burns goes to the person, the senior woman administrator, a woman named Jenny Bramer, and talks to her about this and tries to get something done. And here's what happened. In response to asking for money for food, she's given coupons to McDonald's to feed the student athletes who she had recruited and who she had brought there, and made some representations to them about San Diego State. So, now, why is this laundry list important? This laundry list is part of Title IX, and the component of it is this, is that if you make something that's called a protected disclosure, that protected disclosure is a good faith communication. Good faith communication that may evidence a violation of the law, then you are protected from being retaliated against for having done that. So Coach Burns had been advocating very strongly for a program. She thought that she had a good relationship with Mr. Sturck and Mr. Wicker. It seemed to be, to her, professional. So in 2010, I'm sorry, in 2012, May of 2012, her contract had a provision that said it could be renewed. So she went to talk to Mr. Sturck about renewing the contract. And she told him in that meeting, and they were on a first name basis, Jim, you know, I would like to retire here at San Diego State. Now, in the back of her mind at that time was, she had opportunities to go to other programs. Quite frankly, make more money. But she chose San Diego State. She loved San Diego, and she wanted to stay there. So she went to Mr. Sturck and said, I'd like to retire here, and to give me some assurance that I can, I'd like a long-term contract. And she asked for a 10-year contract. Now, in response to this request by Coach Burns, Mr. Sturck said, Beth, you should retire here. You deserve to retire here. You've won championships. You've hung banners. You've been the coach of the year of the conference. So yes, you should. But I can't give you a 10-year contract. I can extend it for 5 years, and they did that. Now, Coach Burns would describe this meeting as being amicable, being one that she didn't know that there was any resentment being harbored. And after this case is unfolded, we learned that Mr. Sturck had another mindset about Coach Burns that he didn't tell her in this meeting. And that's evidenced in an email, slide 56, exhibit 440.2. And after that meeting with Coach Burns, Mr. Sturck sent this email. He sent it to Sally Roush, who was the number 2 person, the right-hand person of the president, and he copied Mr. Wicker, his lieutenant. And he confirms that Coach Burns had told him she wanted to end her career at San Diego State. But here's something very revealing. He says in the email, I am open to listen to lengthening her contract if we have ways to separate, if she has issues rising to that level, in parentheses, like driving us crazy with complaints. Like driving us crazy with complaints. Now, up until that time, Coach Burns had no idea, no indication from Mr. Sturck or Mr. Wicker that she was driving them crazy with her complaints about the things that she was wanting to get so that her student athletes in the women's program would have equal opportunities with the men. Now, in this case, as I've told you, Coach Burns complained about things that we contend are protected disclosures. The defense is going to claim they weren't. There's something else. They're going to say that she was just grousing, had a personality conflict, so she didn't say the right things. But their administrators, an administrator, two of them, have testified. In order to make a protected disclosure, you don't have to have any magical language. You don't have to say Title IX. You don't have to say illegal. You don't have to put it in writing. What you have to do is provide facts that show there may be a violation of the law. The things on that laundry list that I showed you earlier are categories where when you complain about those things, that's where the protected activity comes in. And she did that, and they held it against her. Now, and there's another important thing here to keep in mind on this subject. Remember the words good faith communication that may evidence an illegal or improper governmental activity. She doesn't have to be right. She doesn't have to be proven right in order to make a protected disclosure. All she has to do is make a good faith communication. She would tell you that she was acting in good faith every time she made a complaint. So, in February 2013, an opportunity arose for Mr. Sturck to do something about Coach Burns. In February, Mr. Wicker encountered an assistant coach from the women's program. The man's name was Adam Barrett. He was in the hallway, just a chance encounter. Now, Mr. Barrett was upset. He was very upset. He was having difficulty, quite frankly, performing. He had been a boys' high school coach, or girls' high school coach, maybe a girls' high school coach, and he had coached club teams, but he only had part of the season, maybe one season, in a Division I program, and he had come to San Diego State into that season. So they have a conversation with Barrett and Wicker. You're going to hear two separate versions of this conversation. Wicker's version is that it was about a 20-minute discussion, during which Mr. Barrett told him he was losing his will to coach, and he was crying about mistreatment by Coach Burns. He told Mr. Wicker that Coach Burns had a lack of respect for his family, and that she mistreated him. He was thinking about leaving the program. That's Mr. Wicker's account. Mr. Barrett testified this meeting took only a few minutes, that he was upset when he saw Mr. Wicker. He admitted he was upset. But the reason he was upset was because he had not been able to complete, to the satisfaction of Coach Burns, an assignment that she'd given him. The assignment involved scouting. Scouting is a very important part the women's basketball program at San Diego State under Coach Burns. Scouting involves going out, finding out what the other team is doing, getting film. You know, the incredible resources that are available in Division I programs are mind-boggling to me because they have technology that allows you to break down film and all of this stuff. So Coach Burns had a very detailed scouting program. That's what Mr. Barrett was upset about. He was upset about not being able to do that. He didn't say, and he denies saying that she mistreated him. He denies saying she didn't respect his family because she respected him. And he said she loved his wife and children. So his crying was because he was frustrated. He was concerned about losing the job. Didn't know if he'd be invited back. But Coach Burton said she hadn't made any decision on whether she was going to invite him back or not. So, with that, Your Honor, we may be at a stopping point.
All right. Good timing. It's 10:30. All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't discuss the case. Let's take 15 minutes. Be back at 10:45.